Crazy stuff. Have a look. What do you think this is? It can only be one thing. This person is shown to be squinting their eye, looking through something that across the rest of this entire temple, which is part of the Hoysala kingdom, there's over 20,000 carvings here.
This is Hoysaleswara Temple in India. Notice how the YouTuber is mesmerized, almost awestruck. That, my dear viewer, is not a reaction to the beauty of the carvings alone, but to the psychedelic geometry designed to exploit the subconscious. The microscopic density of the soapstone moldings, depicting seemingly infinite fractal repetitions of elephants, lions, dancers, and intricate geometric hand gestures, was purposefully engineered to induce immediate fractal satiation. By now, you are aware that fractals belong to the design of the creator, but the enemy has weaponized them. Let me be categorical. Math, geometry, and fractals are not inherently evil. They are the visual shorthand of God's mind, stitched into the fabric of creation itself. But the enemy, as always, counterfeits everything God does, and science is no exception. Everyone who has visited these temples experiences the same sense of captivation and grandeur. As the brain attempts to decipher the intricacy of the carvings, the logical, conscious part of the mind experiences cognitive overload or fatigue, making visitors highly receptive to the spiritual atmosphere of the site. What I find fascinating about these temples is that historians almost always refer to them as artistic masterpieces or geometric marvels, but in reality, when you examine their operational mechanisms and design, they are, in effect, massive industrialized stone computers built for territorial divination and spiritual consolidation. Here is a table clearly showing how these temples functioned like a modern-day computer. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. I will circle back to this table at some point. But first, let us examine how each component of these ancient temples contributed to the collective success of the rituals. The carvings on the exterior acted as an external user interface, dismantling the logical conscious part of the mind, while the ritual chanting inside the temple was collected as frequency within the dark central processor-like interior. The walls, made of quartz-rich materials, compressed the acoustic waves and the kinetic heat generated by densely packed bodies. That energy was then funneled through narrowing corridors and pillars where Earth's battery circuit merged with human chanting, multiplying the voltage. The amplified frequency ultimately converged on the central altar, which functioned as a transducer, allowing the frequency to penetrate the interdimensional veil and establish contact with territorial entities. Notice how there is just enough science to blind the masses to the sorcery being carried out. This is how the enemy operates. He mixes a little truth with lies to lower people's guard. These rituals were a transaction through which the entity gained both the legal right and the energetic nourishment needed to anchor its presence deeply within a territory. This is how strongholds come into being. When humanity grants authority to the devil, his cohorts establish camps within that geographical region, bringing a heavy spiritual veil over the land. This veil dulls human discernment and induces a collective trance state, keeping the population blind to its own spiritual captivity. What I'm describing is reflected in 2 Corinthians 4:4, where Paul states that the God of this world has blinded the minds of unbelievers. But this ancient temple system was never abandoned. In fact, the closest modern equivalent to them is quantum computing and particle colliders. I would even argue that both represent the crowning achievement of techno-sorcery and geosorcery. Corporations are no longer building monuments out of soapstone or relying on primitive computers. Through quantum computing, these tech elites achieve a far more potent result. By manipulating hyperpure silicon and isolating subatomic particles at temperatures near absolute zero, they create cleaner, faster portals for the very same principalities. Do not be fooled by the technology we have today. Whatever technology exists now is simply an evolution of ancient systems, an upgrade rather than a departure. Let us flip the page to the final convergence, which I will call the biological walk-in and the end times delusion. Prophecy teachers are already arguing that the world is ripe for the strong delusion, and I agree. But I would like to add something. The world is not ready because of a sudden lie it will hear. Rather, it is ready because of a physical, digital, and spiritual network that people have already fully integrated into their daily lives. The conditioning is already underway, and it spans technosorcery, geosorcery, Hollywood propaganda, and New Age frequency cults. The masses are in the throes of what may be the ultimate end times deception, the manifestation of the Antichrist, and the presentation of fallen interdimensional entities under the guise of advanced aliens. Right now, as I speak, today's technology is evolving from being merely an assistant to becoming something that can be integrated with humanity in the pursuit of omniscience and immortality. This is the narrative being promoted today. It is also the point at which things move from the benign to the nefarious, because this narrative appears to involve a systematic dismantling of the human body as designed by God, preparing it to function as an organic interdimensional portal. Through biocompatible nanotechnology, digital immersion, and energy-based healing, the physical, psychological, and spiritual foundations of humanity are gradually being reshaped to facilitate contact with non-physical entities. Let me paint a clear picture of how the mass delusion and demonic surge described in Revelation 9, 13, 16, and 18 could manifest physically. When the global frequency activation occurs, it will require no additional infrastructure because the infrastructure is already in place. By infrastructure, I mean cellular towers, low Earth orbit satellite, star-aligned cities, silicon quartz smartphone network, subterranean particle accelerators, and cooled quantum data centers. This technological grid will broadcast a synchronized frequency designed to activate an internal nanotechnological infrastructure already embedded within the population. The interdimensional entities would then execute a final biological walk-in, stepping through the screen, through the frequency, and directly into the prepared human vessels. This would represent the ultimate inversion of the divine order, the complete occupation and corruption of the image of God. This biological and frequency-based perspective is aligned with the chronological narrative of the Book of Revelation, which describes an industrial-scale breakdown of the interdimensional veil during the Great Tribulation. Let us circle back to quantum computing to show you the role it will play in the end times deception. Traditional binary computers are often seen as too limited to process and coordinate the vast financial, biological, social, and behavioral data of a globally interconnected system in real time. This is where quantum computing changes the game. By leveraging quantum mechanical principles, it has the potential to overcome many of these constraints, enabling the analysis of highly complex systems on a massive scale. From this perspective, quantum computing can be seen as the central intelligence needed to run a global system of control and deception, connecting vast technological networks and acting as a link or a bridge between the physical world and the unseen realm. From geosorcery and urban technosorcery to quantum computing, the technological elite, or the tech bros, have built what can be described as a massive high-tech altar designed to orchestrate the final systemic breakdown of the interdimensional veil. Quantum computers, in turn, will provide the computational power necessary to automate a global system of absolute monitoring, biometric tracking, and behavioral management.